We spend so much of our lives looking for a specific kind of shelter. It's an unspoken, almost invisible quest. The search for someone who can look at our chaotic, turbulent inner world and instantly make it quiet. When you feel unsteady, the natural instinct is to reach out and find an anchor. You look for a partner, a friend, or a mentor, hoping that their presence will act as a permanent shield against your own vulnerability. You tell yourself that if they love you enough, if they stay close enough, the background noise of your own unease will finally stop. We walk into rooms carrying a heavy, unspoken exhaustion, silently hoping that the next person we meet will be the one to hold up our sky. We look into the eyes of the people we care about, not just to see them, but to look for our own reflection, desperate for proof that we are allowed to take up space, that we are worthy of being protected. But there is a quiet, eroding exhaustion in trying to build a foundation on the shifting ground of another person's life. You find yourself constantly monitoring their mood, reading the slight changes in their voice, or overanalyzing the spaces between their words. You become a hyper-vigilant observer, trying to read the weather of their emotions just to know if you are allowed to feel safe today. If they are warm, you breathe. If they are distant, the floor beneath you starts to shake. You find yourself pacing the floor of your own mind, wondering why a single delayed response or a slightly short tone can make you feel like everything is falling apart. This isn't connection. It's a survival strategy. And it leaves you perpetually homeless, relying on someone else to give you permission to exist comfortably in your own skin. Think about how heavy that truly is. You are essentially handing the keys of your emotional well-being to someone else, expecting them to guard a house they don't live in. Every time you twist your thoughts, quiet your voice, or alter your plans just to stay in their good graces, you are chipping away at your own foundation. You become a ghost in your own life, floating around their needs, their schedule, and their emotional availability. When they smile, your world brightens. When they withdraw into their own worries, you feel an icy panic settle deep in your chest. It is a terrifying way to live, because deep down, you know that no human being can carry the weight of another person's entire existence. You are asking them to fill a void that was there long before they arrived, a quiet ache that calls out for comfort from the outside because it doesn't know how to find it within. We do this because the alternative feels too painful. Sitting alone with the raw, unfiltered noise of our own anxiety feels like standing in the middle of a storm without shelter. It feels easier to find someone else and build a lean-to against their sturdy walls. But people are not monuments. They are human, fragile, and dealing with their own private weather. When we lean our entire weight against them, we don't just strain the relationship. We abandon ourselves. We buy into the illusion that if we can just find the perfect person, the right circle, or the most validating companion, we will finally be rescued from our own vulnerability. But the rescue never comes from the outside, because the person outside can only ever visit. They can never stay forever inside the quiet rooms of your soul. Until you learn how to stand firmly on your own 2 feet, every anchor you throw out into the world will eventually drag you down into the deep, leaving you stranded, exhausted, and still searching for the warmth of a home you haven't yet learned to build for yourself. When you treat another person as your sole source of safety, an invisible, damaging shift happens. Without meaning to, you begin to distort the very relationship you are trying so hard to protect. You stop seeing them as a complex human being with their own flaws, fatigue, and limitations. And you start seeing them as a sanctuary that is never allowed to close. You place an impossible, suffocating demand on their shoulders, the responsibility to regulate your nervous system, to validate your worth, and to keep your anxieties at bay. They are no longer just your partner, your sibling, or your friend. They have become your emotional life support. And the tragedy of this pattern is that the more you lean on them to save you, the more terrified you become of the moment they might step away, turning a beautiful connection into a fragile bond held together by the grip of fear. Think about the quiet, painful moments where this pattern shows up in your daily life. It's the sudden, icy panic that sets in when a close friend doesn't answer a text message within an hour, causing you to replay every recent conversation in your head to find the exact moment you went wrong. It is the exhausting habit of changing your opinions mid-sentence just to match the person across the room, or abandoning your own plans and desires the moment someone else expresses a slight preference for something else. You trade pieces of your authentic self for the temporary comfort of their approval, selling your truth for a fleeting moment of reassurance. You walk on eggshells in a house you built, terrified that one wrong step, one expression of your true feelings, or one moment of genuine vulnerability will cause them to pack up and leave you completely unprotected in the cold. Over time, you realize you have built a life where you are completely dependent on an external source to feel okay, leaving you entirely vulnerable when they inevitably need to step back to tend to their own lives. You become a hostage to their availability. If they have a bad day at work and come home quiet, you immediately assume their silence is a verdict on your worth. You spend your evenings trying to fix their mood, not out of pure empathy, but out of a desperate need to make them feel good again, so that you can finally feel safe enough to relax. It is a deeply lonely way to live, because you are never actually present in the room. You are always one step ahead, scanning for danger, adjusting your posture, and smoothing over the rough edges of reality, just to maintain an artificial peace. The true cost of this lifestyle is the total abandonment of your own inner world. Every time you look to someone else to tell you that you are good, that you are safe, or that you are allowed to be happy, you are telling your own heart that its voice doesn't matter. You are teaching yourself that your own comfort only counts if it is filtered through the hands of another person. This constant outsourcing of your emotional survival leaves you feeling hollowed out, empty, and perpetually fragile. You begin to realize that the shelter you thought you found in them is actually a cage of your own making. You have traded your freedom for the illusion of security, only to find that no matter how much love, time, or validation they pour into you, the internal hunger never truly goes away. The ache remains, calling out for a deeper, more permanent kind of attention that no one else on this earth can provide for you. Carl Jung once observed, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." When we are desperately searching for safety outside of ourselves, our minds oscillate rapidly between the sense of temporary comfort and the nonsense of total dependence. We look at the external architecture of our lives, the relationships we collect, the affirmations we seek, the tightly woven networks of friends or partners, and we mistake them for internal structure. We tell ourselves that as long as the external scaffolding holds, as long as people are standing around us in a neat and predictable circle, we are safe. We build our identity out of their glances, their compliments, and their presence, convincing ourselves that this beautiful structure we've built out of other people is a permanent fortress that will protect us from our deepest fears. But external scaffolding is temporary by nature, and it is incredibly fragile. People grow, people change, and people have their own internal battles to fight, their own grief to carry, and their own limited capacities. When you rely on someone else to be your emotional home, you are essentially asking them to hold up a ceiling that you should be building for yourself. You look at their strength and think it can be your strength. You look at their stability and think it can cure your instability. But a house built entirely on borrowed pillars cannot withstand the natural shifts of life. When they step away, even for a brief moment, to tend to their own wounds, or when they simply do not have the energy to carry your weight along with theirs, the roof caves in. The sudden collapse leaves you standing in the ruins, wondering how a connection that felt so solid could leave you feeling so utterly exposed and broken. This is the illusion we fall for over and over again. The belief that if the outside looks complete, the inside will stop hurting. We pour all our energy into maintaining the architecture of our relationships, making sure everyone else is happy, comfortable, and firmly in place. We become masters at decorating the exterior, showing the world and convincing ourselves that we are surrounded by safety. Yet, beneath that elaborate framework, the interior remains empty, cold, and unmapped. You can surround yourself with the most loving, attentive people in the world, but if you have not built an internal floor to stand on, you will still feel like you are falling through space. True safety cannot be borrowed. It cannot be bought with people-pleasing. And it cannot be rented from someone else's emotional real estate. It is an inside job, a quiet construction that happens away from the eyes of others. When the illusion shatters, it feels devastating, but it is actually the beginning of truth. It forces you to realize that you cannot use another person's life as a substitute for your own growth. You cannot expect someone else's love to heal a wound that you refuse to look at yourself. Every time the external architecture fails you, it is not a sign that you are unlovable or that the world is inherently cruel. It is a gentle, painful reminder that you are looking for shelter in the wrong direction. It is a call to pull your energy back into your own boundaries, to look at the raw, unfinished space inside your own heart, and to begin the slow, deliberate work of laying your own bricks. It means realizing that the only roof that will ever truly shield you from the storms of life is the one you build with your own hands, sourced from your own resilience, independent of whether the people around you are ready to hold you up or not. Every time we look for safety in another person, we are usually running away from a part of ourselves that we don't know how to handle. We hand over our vulnerability, our fear, and our self-doubt to someone else, because looking at those pieces directly feels too overwhelming. We want someone else to fix the broken machinery inside us so we don't have to touch the sharp edges. We look for a partner to hold our loneliness so we don't have to feel its heavy ache. Or we look for a friend to validate our choices because we are terrified of the silence that follows our own decisions. But the parts of you that you try to hide, bury, or delegate to others do not disappear. They simply wait in the dark background of your mind, growing louder and more restless the more they are ignored, casting long shadows over every relationship you try to build. To stop searching for safety in others, you have to begin the slow, deliberate, and deeply emotional process of reclaiming these disowned parts of your life. It means sitting with the discomfort of your own emptiness without immediately picking up your phone to call someone just to numb the quiet. It means noticing that intense, frantic urge to ask 3 different people for their opinion on a decision you already know the answer to, and choosing instead to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and trust your own judgment. When you stop outsourcing your emotional well-being to the people around you, you finally give yourself the rare and beautiful chance to see that you are fully capable of handling your own heavy lifting. You begin to realize that the fear you were running from is not a monster designed to destroy you, but simply a part of you that has been left out in the cold for far too long, waiting for you to invite it back inside. Think about how much energy it takes to constantly hide your own vulnerability from yourself. You spend your days pretending to be perfectly fine, perfectly stable, and entirely self-sufficient, all while secretly begging someone else to notice the cracks in your armor and save you from the act. Reclaiming the disowned self means dropping the armor entirely when you are alone. It means allowing yourself to weep on the kitchen floor without needing an audience to tell you that your tears are justified. It means letting yourself feel angry or confused or profoundly tired without rushing to find someone who can talk you out of your feelings. When you step into your own emotional space and claim it fully, you are telling yourself that you are worthy of being witnessed by your own eyes, and that your internal world is safe enough to inhabit. even when it is messy and unresolved. This reclamation is where your true power is born. It is the moment you stop treating yourself like a project that needs a second opinion and start treating yourself like a person who deserves protection from within. It is a quiet, sacred shift. You begin to look at your history, your mistakes, and your deep-seated anxieties, not as flaws that make you unlovable to others, but as the raw material of your own strength. Every time you choose to sit through a wave of anxiety without reaching out for a temporary lifeline from someone else, you are building a bridge back to your soul. You are proving to your own heart, choice by choice, and day by day, that you do not need to be rescued by another human being, because you have finally decided to show up and rescue yourself. The moment you decide to become your own home, the way you interact with the world changes entirely. You begin to understand that boundaries are not cold, harsh walls designed to lock people out or keep the world at a distance. They are the invisible doors that dictate how much of yourself you give away and what you allow inside your sacred space. When you lack an internal sense of safety, your boundaries are incredibly porous, almost non-existent. You open your doors to everyone and everything, letting other people's bad moods, chaotic energy, and unfair expectations dictate your entire evening, or taking on emotional responsibilities that aren't yours, just to keep the peace and ensure they don't leave you. You become an open field in the middle of a storm, wondering why you feel so battered, soaked, and exhausted at the end of every single day. Building an internal home looks like establishing clear, compassionate, and firm limits around your emotional energy. It's the ability to look at someone you deeply love, recognize their suffering, and still say to yourself, "I understand you are having a difficult day, but I cannot carry this anger or projection for you." It's choosing to spend a quiet evening sitting comfortably by yourself, letting your mind drift and your body rest, rather than forcing yourself to go to a social gathering just because you are terrified of being forgotten or left behind. When your safety is rooted deeply inside you, you no longer feel the constant, frantic need to please everyone at your own expense. You realize that saying a gentle but firm no to someone else is often the only way to say a resounding, life-saving yes to your own stability and peace of mind. Think about the quiet bravery it takes to stop absorbing the emotional overflow of the people around you. For so long, you might have believed that being a good friend, a good partner, or a good person meant being an emotional sponge, absorbing everyone else's stress, validation-seeking, and unspoken tension just so they would feel comfortable enough to stay near you. But that is a recipe for internal bankruptcy. Setting boundaries means you stop abandoning yourself to make others comfortable. It means you allow people to experience their own discomfort, their own anger, and their own disappointments without rushing in to fix it or smooth it over. You give them the dignity of carrying their own weight, and in doing so, you free up your hands to finally hold your own life with the care, tenderness, and attention it has been starving for. This process can feel incredibly terrifying at first, because your mind will tell you that setting limits will drive people away. It will whisper that if you aren't completely available, completely accommodating, and completely self-sacrificing, you will be abandoned. But the truth is, boundaries are the only way to build real, lasting connection. They teach people how to love you without consuming you, and they teach you how to love others without disappearing into them. When you stand firmly within your own boundaries, you are no longer begging for shelter in their lives. You are standing in the doorway of your own home, deciding what is healthy enough to be invited inside. You create a safe, stable environment where your soul can finally drop its shoulders, take a deep breath, and rest, knowing that you are the one keeping watch over your own peace. When the urge to seek safety in another person strikes, it usually comes as a sudden, overwhelming wave of internal urgency. Your mind starts spinning with endless scenarios, your chest tightens, and you feel a desperate, almost frantic need for external reassurance. You want to send that message, make that call, or ask that recurring question just to hear them say that everything is fine. In those heavy, fast-moving moments, the most powerful thing you can do is pull your attention entirely away from the other person, away from the screen, and bring it completely back to your immediate, physical reality. You have to anchor yourself in the present moment before your mind convinces you that you are adrift at sea and that only someone else can pull you back to shore. Look around the room you are in right now. Notice the texture of the fabric beneath your hands, the weight of your feet resting firmly against the floor, or the steady, rhythmic sound of your own breathing. Take a slow, deliberate sip of water and focus entirely on the sensation of coolness moving down your throat. By grounding yourself in the physical present, you interrupt the anxious loop that tells you safety is somewhere else, with someone else. You remind your nervous system that right here, right now, in this exact coordinate of time and space, you are completely intact. The world is not ending. The ceiling is not falling. And you are entirely capable of holding yourself together without needing another human being to validate your existence. Think about how often we abandon our physical bodies when we are anxious. We get trapped in the upper floors of our minds, looking out the windows, staring at our phones, and waiting for a notification to give us permission to breathe. We become floating heads, completely disconnected from the very ground that supports us. Grounding is the act of coming back downstairs. It is choosing to sit quietly with the racing heart and the shallow breath, putting your hand over your chest and saying, I am here. I am right here. It is a gentle but firm reclamation of your physical sovereignty. When you focus on the simple, undeniable reality of the present, the sunlight filtering through the window, the solid surface of the chair beneath you, the cool air entering your lungs, the chaotic narrative in your head begins to lose its grip. You realize that the emergency is an illusion born of fear, and that the reality of the moment is actually quiet, still, and completely safe. This simple act of returning to the immediate present is how you build an internal sanctuary. It is a practice that demands nothing from anyone else. You don't need a text back, you don't need an apology, and you don't need a guarantee about tomorrow to feel grounded right now. Every time you consciously pull your mind back from the person you are chasing and place it back into your own physical form, you are laying a brick in the foundation of your own home. You are proving to your anxious thoughts that you do not need to be rescued from this moment, because you are fully equipped to live inside it. You begin to understand that safety isn't a magical place you find in someone else's arms. It is a quiet, steady state of being that you cultivate right where you are standing, completely rooted in the simple truth of your own presence. Stepping away from the habit of external validation is not a smooth, peaceful, or comfortable process. In fact, when you first make the conscious choice to lean on yourself instead of rushing to others, it can feel incredibly lonely, disorienting, and counterintuitive. You might experience a heavy sense of withdrawal, as if you are walking through a completely unfamiliar landscape without a coat. Your mind will try to scream at you that you are making a massive mistake, whispering that it was so much easier, safer, and warmer when you just let someone else dictate your emotional state and carry your burdens. The quietness of autonomy can feel less like peace at first, and more like an empty room where every single heartbeat echoes with terrifying clarity. This intense discomfort is a completely natural, necessary part of developing true autonomy. It is the raw, aching feeling of emotional muscles being used for the very first time in your entire life. When you choose to sit through a difficult, heavy evening without texting someone for reassurance, or when you allow yourself to feel deeply sad without needing a friend to validate that sadness, you are actively building resilience. You are proving to yourself, trial by trial and hour by hour, that you do not break when you are left alone with your own mind. The discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure, nor is it a sign that you are unlovable. It is the necessary friction of your own internal growth. It is the painful but beautiful breaking of an old mold that kept you small, dependent, and perpetually searching for a home outside of yourself. Think about the sheer bravery it takes to stay in that discomfort instead of running away from it. For years, your immediate reflex when anxiety flared up was to reach out, to find a voice, a distraction, or a comforting presence to put out the fire inside you. Choosing autonomy means you are standing by the fireplace, watching the flames, and realizing that you have the capacity to let it burn out on its own without burning you down. It means sitting on your hands when you want to beg for attention, and choosing to talk to yourself with the same tenderness, patience, and warmth you so desperately wanted to hear from someone else. It is an incredibly intimate act of self-loyalty. You are finally choosing to show up for the one person you have abandoned in every previous storm, yourself. As you navigate this rocky, uncomfortable transition, the landscape slowly begins to change. The emptiness of the quiet room stops feeling cold and starts feeling spacious. The absence of external noise gives you the rare, beautiful opportunity to finally hear the true sound of your own voice, unfiltered by the expectations or moods of the people around you. You begin to realize that the discomfort was never a barrier designed to keep you from safety. It was the doorway you had to walk through to find it. Every single time you survive a wave of panic, a lonely evening, or a difficult decision completely on your own, the foundation beneath your feet grows firmer. You are no longer a fragile leaf blown around by the winds of other people's availability. You are becoming a deeply rooted tree, learning to stand tall and find your own nourishment in the very soil you occupy. As you gradually strengthen your internal foundation, your relationship with the concept of connection undergoes a radical, beautiful transformation. Carl Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." When you look inside and finally awaken to your own strength, you stop using people as life rafts in a stormy sea. You no longer approach relationships from a place of desperate scarcity, begging for crumbs of validation just to survive the night, or molding yourself into whatever shape someone else desires just to keep them close. The frantic, exhausting hunger to be rescued begins to quiet down, replaced by a deep, steady sense of self-assurance that cannot be easily shaken. Instead, you begin to approach the people in your life from a place of abundance. You don't need them to build a house for you because you have already spent the time, the tears, and the quiet effort to build your own. This internal stability allows you to see people exactly as they truly are, rather than what they can do for your anxiety. You no longer look at a partner or a friend and think, "Can you keep me safe?" Instead, you can look at them and think, "I see you, and I am glad you are here." You can appreciate their company, celebrate their victories, and support them in their deepest struggles without losing your own balance or drowning in their emotions. Connection ceases to be a frantic, terrified search for shelter and becomes a conscious, beautiful choice shared between two independent individuals. Think about the profound relief that comes with this kind of stability. You no longer have to spend your days reading the invisible weather patterns of everyone else's expressions. If someone you love is having a difficult day, or if they need to step back into their own quiet space for a while, it no longer feels like an eviction notice from the world. You don't panic. You don't scramble to fix it. And you don't assume you did something wrong. You simply allow them to be human, because your safety doesn't depend on their constant warmth. You have your own warmth now. You have created an internal climate that can withstand the natural cooling and shifting of the world around you, giving both you and the people you care about the room to breathe, grow, and exist without fear. This is the ultimate wisdom of being your own home. It changes the way you walk through life. You move with a quiet dignity, knowing that whatever happens, whoever stays or whoever leaves, the ground beneath your feet will remain solid. You stop asking the world for permission to feel okay. You realize that the love and security you were always chasing in others was actually your own capacity to care, projected onto them. By pulling that projection back into your own heart, you become whole. You are no longer searching for a missing piece of yourself in the eyes of a stranger or the approval of a crowd. You have found the missing piece in the mirror, and in that quiet realization, you finally find the lasting peace that no one else could ever give you, and no one else can ever take away. Becoming your own home is not a one-time achievement, a grand breakthrough, or a destination you reach once and never leave. It is a quiet, ongoing, daily practice of returning to yourself over and over again. There will still be days when you feel incredibly fragile, when an unexpected piece of news, a cold interaction with someone you love, or a delayed response makes you want to revert to your old ways and hide behind someone else's strength. The old habits of looking outside for a rescue do not vanish overnight. They are deeply grooved paths in your mind, and when the weather of life gets rough, your thoughts will naturally try to run down those familiar tracks. The goal is not to become completely immune to these vulnerable moments, but to change how you hold yourself when they happen. When you notice yourself slipping back into the anxious patterns of seeking external rescue, greet yourself with gentle patience rather than harsh judgment. Recognize the urge for what it is, simply a tired, frightened part of you reaching out for a familiar blanket because the current moment feels too cold. Do not punish yourself for feeling small or for wanting someone else to fix the pain. Softly, tenderly, redirect your focus inward. Take a conscious step back from the situation. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and remind yourself of the foundation you have spent so much time building in the quiet. You are the one who has survived every single difficult moment of your life so far. And you are the one who will carry yourself through this one, too. Think about how beautiful it is to realize that you can always come back. No matter how far you drift, no matter how much you lose your footing, and no matter how many times you accidentally hand your peace over to someone else, your internal home is always waiting for you to walk back through the door. It doesn't lock you out for making a mistake. The daily practice of return looks like catching yourself mid-sentence when you are about to apologize for a feeling that is completely valid. It looks like putting your phone down in another room when you feel the frantic itch to check for a message that will supposedly prove you are valued. It is a series of tiny, invisible choices made throughout the day where you look at your own heart and say, I am not going to leave you behind today just to keep someone else comfortable. This practice requires a deep, emotional commitment to your own worth. It means learning to be the adult in the room for your own inner child, offering yourself the exact reassurance, stability, and warmth that you used to beg for from the outside world. When the evening settles in and the silence feels a bit too heavy, the practice of return is what allows you to wrap your arms around your own shoulders and find comfort in your own presence. You begin to realize that the most important relationship you will ever cultivate is the one happening right here, between your mind and your heart. Choice by choice, day by day, you strengthen the muscle of self-loyalty, turning what used to be a frantic search for shelter into a beautiful, steady habit of standing firmly in your own skin, fully aware that you are always safe in your own care. Ultimately, the realization that you are your own home is one of the most liberating, life-altering truths you will ever encounter. It means that the safety, peace, and validation you have spent years desperately searching for in the eyes, words, and actions of others has actually been within your possession the entire time. You do not need to wait for someone else to finally choose you, to understand your complicated depths, or to tell you that you are allowed to rest your weary head. You can give that exact permission to yourself right now, in this very room, in this very breath. You no longer have to live like a beggar at the door via someone else's affection, hoping they will spare a small piece of their warmth to keep your cold fears at bay. You are the architect of your own peace. You are the solid, unshakable walls that protect your quiet heart from the noise of the world, the heavy roof that shields you from the storm when everyone else walks away, and the deep, internal warmth that keeps you grounded when the outside world grows cold and distant. When you finally stop looking for a temporary place to land in other people, you realize your feet have been resting on solid ground all along. The frantic running stops, the desperate checking of screens, the constant scanning of facial expressions, the exhausting shaping of your personality just to feel accepted. It all fades into the background. You can take a deep, unrestricted breath, step completely inside your own mind, and finally feel the profound, weeping relief of knowing that you are completely, beautifully home. Think about the sheer weight you drop when you accept this truth. For so long, you have carried the terrifying belief that if a certain person left you, or if a certain relationship failed, you would dissolve into nothingness. You lived with the constant background radiation of anxiety, terrified of the day the shelter would be taken away. But when you realize that you are the shelter, the fear loses its power over your life. People can come into your life, and you can love them deeply, fiercely, and beautifully, but they are no longer your survival. If they choose to walk away, it will hurt, and you will grieve, but the house you live in will not fall down. The walls will stand, the hearth will remain warm, and you will still be completely intact, safe within the fortress of your own self-loyalty. This is the place where you finally get to rest. You don't have to perform anymore. You don't have to be perfect, or always happy, or completely healed to deserve this home. Your internal sanctuary is a place where you can invite your mess, your fatigue, and your unresolved sorrows, and allow them to just exist without judgment. It is a space where you can look at your reflection and realize that the love you were always chasing out there was actually your own love trying to find its way back to you. You are the rescue you have been waiting for. You can close your eyes, wrap your arms around your own fragile frame, listen to the steady beat of your own resilient heart, and finally say to yourself, with absolute certainty and overwhelming tenderness, I am here. I am safe. I am finally home. The journey of becoming your own home is not a path that removes you from the world, but one that finally allows you to live in it without fear. For so long, the landscape of your life may have felt like an endless series of transit stations, places where you paused, unpacked a small suitcase of your identity, and waited to see if the person across from you would allow you to stay. You became an expert at reading the architecture of other people's lives, learning where to tread so you wouldn't cause the floorboards of their temperament to creak, learning how to compress your needs into the smallest possible drawers so you wouldn't take up too much space. You lived in a state of perpetual packing, always ready for the moment the lease on their attention would expire, and you would be cast back out into the cold landscape of your own unresolved identity. But as you stand now, looking back at the long, winding road of your own healing, you can see that every moment of exile was actually a quiet invitation to return to the source. The times when people could not love you the way you needed, the moments when doors were closed or text messages were left suspended in a painful, echoing silence. These were not indictments of your worth. They were the universe's severe and painful way of stripping away your life rafts so that you would finally learn how to swim. They were disruptions designed to break the illusion that anyone else could ever hold the keys to your internal peace. Carl Jung noted that the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. It is exactly these intense conflicts, the brutal friction between your desperate need for external rescue and the stubborn silence of the world, that forge the iron structure of your internal stability. When you look into your own heart now, you do not see an empty, terrifying void that needs to be filled by the presence of a partner or the validation of a crowd. You see a landscape that has been thoroughly mapped, walked through, and claimed by your own awareness. You have sat in the dark rooms of your own loneliness and discovered that the dark does not swallow you whole. You have stood by the wild, turbulent currents of your own anxiety and realized that you do not drown simply because the water is rough. You have met the parental critic, the inner skeptic, and the hyper-vigilant protector within your own mind. And instead of running away to find someone else to soothe them, you have sat down at the table with them and listened to their stories. You have become the gentle observer of your own internal weather, understanding that a storm may pass through your skies, but you are the sky, not the weather. This realization brings a quiet, unshakable dignity to the way you move through the world. You no longer enter relationships with your hands held out like a beggar, asking, "Will you save me? Will you prove that I matter?" Instead, you enter them with your hands open, saying, This is who I am, in all my messy, beautiful reality. I am here to share my warmth with you, not to consume yours. You stop projecting your need for a savior onto fragile, flawed human beings who are simply trying to navigate their own private difficulties. This frees the people around you from the impossible burden of your emotional survival, allowing your connections to become clean, honest, and profoundly deep. You can love people for exactly who they are, without the undercurrent of resentment that always builds when you rely on someone else to keep you from falling apart. Think of the sheer beauty of a life lived from the inside out. You no longer need to check a device or a facial expression to know if you are allowed to have a good day. You do not need to rewrite your history, hide your vulnerabilities, or edit your thoughts to fit the contours of someone else's comfort zone. If the world outside becomes chaotic, cold, or rejecting, you have a place to retreat to, a sanctuary that belongs entirely to you, where the fire is always lit, the doors are always secure, and the hospitality is unconditional. You have built this structure out of your own survival, using the bricks of your past heartbreaks, the mortar of your tears, and the architectural design of your own hard-won resilience. The search is over. The long, exhausting pilgrimage outside of yourself has finally come to an end, not because you found the perfect person or the perfect circumstance, but because you stopped running away from the person in the mirror. You have finally realized that you are not a fragment looking for another fragment to make a whole. You are a complete, intact ecosystem, fully capable of generating your own light, your own comfort, and your own validation. The floor beneath you is no longer shaking because you are the one holding it up. Take a deep, final breath and let the remaining tension drain from your shoulders. Listen to the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breath, the deep pulse of your own life, and feel the immense, sacred relief of a soul that has finally, completely closed the door on the outside world and stepped inside. You are the shelter. You are the sanctuary. You are the home